Hi there, my name's Simon Levette and I'm the Centre Manager of the ABC Assessment Centre. And today we're going to demonstrate how to install a modular brick slip system to manufacturer specifications. And with me today is Ian Mitchell, and he's going to be helping me out with the practical aspect. And before we start, I'm just going to ask Ian just to say a few words about his experience in the construction industry and how he's going to help me out today.
Thank you, Simon. So I bring 30 odd years experience from the construction industry. I was 3 years as a bricklaying apprenticeship and then stayed on site for another 17 years to gain some experience, moving on to a site manager's role and then a contracts manager. So bringing, as I said, about 30 years experience to this camera shoot. Thank you very much.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much. So before we start the install procedure, I just want to give a little bit of background. Because you may be thinking to yourself, well, what on earth is a brick slip system? Brick slip systems are an alternative facade choice where you want to retain a brick aesthetic, but you don't have the traditional brick and block cavity option either available or specified for the job you're working on. The complexity and innovation in brick slip systems has changed quite significantly and improved quite a lot over the last few decades, from original site-formed and site-cut brick slips and overcladding on buildings to panelized systems which had runners and maybe an insulation board backing, to nowadays you have fully panelized modular brick slip systems that are entirely manufactured off-site. Modern systems like Certus by ACS Facades that we're fitting today is one of those that has a mechanical fixed brick slip which gives it an A1 non-combustibility rating and means that we can use it on projects where construction exceeds 18 meters in height. As you'll see from the techniques in this video, this is perhaps something more suited to a steel fixer than a bricklayer. However, it's something that's really, really useful to have in your arsenal, and it's something that big subbies and specialist fixers are increasingly using on sites, and therefore having this competency in your arsenal is of massive value to you as an operative. The ABC Assessment Centre's Brick Slip Systems short course that accompanies this video goes into a little bit more detail about the different types of system available, some of the products on the market, and also how these systems take into account changes in building legislation. The first thing that we need to look at, as always, are some health and safety considerations related to this install. Some health and safety to take into consideration before installing brick slip systems. Firstly, individual panels are lightweight enough for one operative to handle. However, consider working in pairs when offering up to the framing structure and stacking and storing on site in general. This type of system is usually installed from mutes, for example, a scissor lift. So you need to wear a harness, you must have tool tethers, and you need to set an exclusion zone below. This won't be the case for today's demonstration because we're working at ground level, but just to be aware that in a normal site environment, that is how the installation would take place. This installation also requires mechanical fixing, therefore using a drill. And whenever you use a drill, we need to have the right PPE. We need to also visually inspect the power tool prior to use. We need to monitor for halves, and we need to make sure that it's pure registered as well. Other than that, the usual hazards related to slips, trips and falls on site, or when you're out on the scaffold, these should be avoided at all costs. But all of these things should be found in the RAMS document, which you must read prior to undertaking any task. Before we go any further in this video, it's worth pointing out the personal protective equipment, or PPE, that you must wear when on site. Because without wearing this personal protective equipment, you cannot even get to the point where you're doing the installation, similar to that we're doing on the video today. So, what do I mean by PPE? Well, it's a 5-point PPE, and myself and Ian here have the correct 5-point PPE, which consists of hard hat, glasses, high-vis vest, gloves, and steel toe cap boots. Remember, there are some jobs on site or some tasks that require additional PPE, and information related to these can all be found in the RAMS document. Okay, so let's have a quick check of all the equipment that we're going to need to install our brick slip system. So we've got the ACS Certus brick slip system, 4 panels, helping hand brackets, stitching bricks, drill with hex head fitment and tech screws, traditional and laser level, vertical T-rail. As always, the first part of the installation procedure is setting out. The useful thing about systems like Certus, for example, is that they are by definition modular. That means that they are pre-manufactured off-site and they are delivered to site in the locations that they are supposed to be installed in by the operatives on site. In other words, the manufacturer will supply batches of panels for each lift or phase or section of the building, and they will have the locations clearly marked on them. So that makes the setting out procedure much easier and avoids us installing the wrong facing panels in the wrong locations. As with all products incorporating brick slips, be careful not to put the brick face down directly onto the ground or scaffold board, as this could scuff the face of the facade. Manufacturers usually recommend using a layer of polystyrene or the same expansion foam that you would use for a movement joint, for example. Any damages that occur cannot be fixed on site. You must contact the manufacturer directly and wait for the panels to be resupplied by them. Now, this could lead to hold-ups in the job and could put you behind, and also could incur extra costs. So it's very important to protect your brick slips at all costs. When it comes to setting out the framing structure or the support structure for the brick slip system, fail to prepare and you should prepare to fail. Make sure that you account for any inaccuracies in the backing structure, although this should be rare in steel construction, and make sure that you've correctly measured out your fixing points for the vertical T-rails, and also make sure you've taken into account the exact dimensions of corners, openings and reveals. This is also where reading drawings comes into play. Make sure that you've got the right panels for the right area and that you understand the manufacturer's referencing and the dimensions on the drawings. For the purposes of this video, we're going to be installing 2 rows of helping hand brackets at 675mm intervals, which coincides both with the steel studs behind the weatherboard and also the same width as the facing panels that we've got to install. Ordinarily, if we're installing this system on a larger scale, we would have coordination rails, so horizontal rails, where we could fit the helping hand brackets into where we can't find a stud. Obviously, in this case, we're not exerting loads of pressure onto the system, so we're not going to use any coordination rails. Ian can see from the section detail provided that the centre of the first bracket must be 250mm from ground level and the centre of the upper bracket must be 700mm from ground level. Having located the first stud on the right hand side of the setup, where our measurements for this install are taken from, Ian is now setting up a laser line vertically. He is now using a tape measure and marking the centres of the fixing points for the brackets. Once the brackets are offered up to the weatherboard and checked for plumb, they can be fixed back to the stud using an impact driver or drill and the correct fixings as specified by the manufacturer. Now we have our first 2 helping hand brackets in place, we can set our laser level up to the other 2 studs that we need to drill into in order to fix the 2 sets of brackets. which are 670mm and 1340mm in from the right hand stud respectively. Having marked the fixing points for the 4 remaining helping hand brackets, Ian is now mechanically fixing these back to the studs via the weatherboard. Now we've got our brackets in place, it's a case of installing our vertical T-rails. Now, I know what you're thinking, it's just a case of slotting them in, zipping them in with the drill, and away you go. But trust me, if you get this incorrect, or if you don't do it right, you're back to square one, you have to take a lot of the work down, and it slows up the process considerably. Remember that the key advantage of this system versus traditional brick cladding is the speed of installation. So if it turns out that you've put your T-rail on and it's not plumb, or that you've not left an even cavity width all the way along, it could lead to taking large parts of your work down, all of the panels, and starting all over again, which obviously is not an effective way to do the install and will slow you down considerably. So, heeding that warning, let's take another look at our detailed drawing. As you can see, the manufacturer specifies a 171mm air gap in behind the panels, which equates to 200mm from the front of the brick facade to the weatherboard behind, as well as a total height of 900mm from ground level. With this in mind, Ian is now slotting the first vertical T-rail into position. He is now repeating this process with the other 2 rails before mechanically fixing in place. And is measuring that 171mm cavity width to the front of the rail with a tape measure, making adjustments as he goes to make sure the rail is plumb. Ian is now mechanically fixing the first rail to the top bracket in 2 positions as per the fixing detail on the drawings, with the correct X screws specified for this location. Now that the preparation phase is out of the way, it's time to add in our brick slip panels and build up the facade in the section that we're working on, safe in the knowledge that we've set out correctly as per the drawings. Ordinarily, you'd start the installation procedure from the bottom left-hand corner and work your way across. However, all of our drawings and our dimensions are set out from the right-hand steel. So we're going to start off in the bottom right-hand corner. As you can see, Ian is offering up the panel to the required fixing points on both the right and middle T-rails and checking the level of the first panel. Now we've secured the first panel and double checked the level, Ian is simply repeating the process with the adjacent panel on the left side. Ian is following the same procedure and ranging across when he's done to guarantee that the bottom row of panels is level. Remember, it is imperative to make sure your first row is level, as everything slots in above that. You need to make sure that you're building off a level base. Now we've got our first 2 panels in, the process to continue on could not be simpler. The upper 2 panels just slot into the ones below, as you can see here, and we tech screw into the vertical T-rails to secure in place. Once done, we do a final check that all of our panels are installed correctly, and then we're ready to put the stitching bricks in between our left and right panels. as you can see, the panel system is designed so that one full brick slip can clip into place over the joins between the panels to continue the bond pattern and to hide the fixings we've just put in. First of all, make sure you select the correct facing side of the brick. If you can see where it's been cut and it's rougher, that's the non-facing side, so make sure you maintain a consistent brick facade throughout. You'll also notice that there are two stitching grooves, one deeper groove in the top and a shallower one in the bottom. In terms of clipping the stitching bricks in, there's a bit of a knack to this. You start by slotting it in the top groove, apply some pressure and then bring the bottom down into the bottom groove as Ian is demonstrating. Once you've got 3 stitching bricks in per panel for the entire facade section, it's time to tidy up the perp joints a little bit. Ian is using a small bolster to move the brick slips along the runners to achieve an even 10mm perp joint across the facade that we've created. So as you can see, we've now finished the install procedure. We've installed 4 brick slip facade panels and we've included the stitching bricks between them, and we've also installed the backing or support structure to the SFS system behind. But before we finish, I just wanted to get a couple of top tips from Ian here on things potentially to avoid and the best practice for doing this installation procedure. So Ian, over to you.
Thank you, Simon. Some of the tips here is obviously, as most things, it's checking that the application is correct. The back support rails are in the right position that suits the set out of the drawings. Your fixings you've got are the right type of fixings. A special fixing behind the stitch bricks is a pan-handled one, which needs to be lower so that it allows the brick to fit into the void. And a technique of fitting these stitch bricks is to locate them to the top rail with your palm and then palm them back down to the lower rail. Which finishes it off. When you've finished the thing, just check the perps are the right size. Using a 3-inch bolster sometimes eases it over. That's just a matter of moving the perps to the correct thing, plumbing them and marking that they're correct. But this is a valuable skill that we can upskill ourselves to, which makes us more useful on site rather than stepping back and allow a specialist to do it. It's something that a bricklayer can do with the right correct tools and the right fixings. But again, it's just checking everything is fine. So it should be an easy task to do. But thank you very much, Simon.
Excellent, thank you very much. And yes, exactly as you say, the value of the bricklayer or the site operative is only going to go up by knowing how to do these types of competencies, and they're going to be ever more relevant. Evidently, this is not replacing the bricklayer, but it's offering an alternative to site construction. And one of the benefits is the speed at which you can install this versus a traditional sort of brick and block cavity. So definitely something that's brilliant to know how to do. And as we said before, you're going to be of much greater value to your employer. So last thing to say is just on behalf of myself and Ian, thank you very much for watching this video, and we hope to see you very soon for another install video.